DC Comics has some pretty wild imaginary stories. Now that may sound like an odd statement, and some of you may be filling in the automatic "aren't they all" a la Alan Moore inside. Very whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. But imaginary stories are essentially proto-Elseworlds. Or if one is thinking in Marvel terms, what ifs. Because these imaginary tales come first. At least in terms of being labeled an official branch of stories. Its own series. Basically, an imaginary story is a tale explicitly taking place outside of the mainline DC continuity. It's something that wouldn't normally happen, and they very clearly state that. It's not because of a head injury, or a dream, or a computer simulation. Those stories have aged incredibly well with the advent of AI. But just to say, these are hypotheticals. Maybe something that fans were wondering about, or creators just wanted to explore for reasons. Although you will find some who classify some of the aforementioned as imaginary. When it comes to the first imaginary story to be explicitly stated as such, it brings us to an oft overlooked and very underrated series, Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. A lot of the early imaginary tales in particular focused on personal questions, a lot of them around Superman's love life. It's fitting since Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane so often featured her scheming, trying to plan ways that she could entrap the Man of Steel and marry him. It's very amusing, especially when one thinks about the girlfriend in the title of the comic. This first imaginary tale is about Superman and Lois Lane's marriage. Now before we go on, we need to briefly talk about Superman Matinee Idol, a story originally from Superman number 19. Now some cite this as the first imaginary story because in Superman 183 from 1966, where it was reprinted, it was originally published in 1942 without any labeling upon it, but upon reprint it is given the label of the first imaginary story, and in my opinion is there to cash in on the now established imaginary story label, which was doing well at the time. The first imaginary label appearing on this Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane issue that we're about to discuss, which was printed in 1960, 6 years before the reprint. What happens in Superman Matinee Idol, Lois and Clark go to watch an episode of the Superman cartoon, the Fleischer one. You can kind of see why they would label it as imaginary, but it doesn't have quite the same energy. But if one feels that this page with the insert counts as DC editorial claiming this as the first story, and that their word supersedes the chronology, or that their recontextualization of Superman Matinee Idol takes precedence, that would be the first. For me, what we're looking at is the first printed story to officially rock the imaginary label, but that piece of history must be acknowledged. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and it's time to explore the story Mr. and Mrs. Clark Superman Kent, from Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane number 19. The year this was published was 1960, and while it does get the cover of the issue, it's the third story inside it. It's written by Superman co-creator Jerry Siegel, with art by Kurt Schaffenberger, the Silver Age Lois Lane VIP. It's an early outing for him, so there's still some Wayne Boring in there. That was the artist whose style he was approximating. At the start, it was part of what helped him get the job, but he very quickly came to define his own Lois Lane style, one that would become definitive for a time. As for the story, they hit you really hard with the concept right off the bat, making sure that it's very clearly stated that this isn't a mainline story. First of an imaginary series. Here it is at last, what thousands of readers have written and clamoring for, an imaginary story showing how things would be if Lois Lane learned Clark Kent were Superman and married him. This is only the first of many such tales, which could very well happen in the future lives of Lois Lane and Superman, but perhaps never will. The first adventure in this unusual series concerning the most fantastic marriage of all time, which may never take place, remember, is entitled Mr. and Mrs. Clark Superman Kent. Hurry home, dear. Supper will be ready early tonight. Would our neighbors be astounded if they knew my husband, Clark, is leaving our home through a secret tunnel as Superman? Right off the bat, it's worth noting that this story is positioned very interestingly for a contemporary reader, because Lois Lane and Clark Kent being married is the status quo. It's what's expected at this point in time. They've been married for decades, and in fact, if they were to not be married or when they try and break them up, that's when people start thinking that there's something wrong. So this story is seeking to maintain a very different status quo, because part of it's going to be working through the idea that this marriage wouldn't work out, or that there would be a lot of problems with it, or just some ways to make the main stories seem more appealing. Now, the in-universe rationale at the time for Superman not marrying Lois was that she would be in jeopardy, her life would be in jeopardy. But the metatextual element seems to be that the stories would end because it wouldn't be appropriate, because she would no longer be able to do certain things as a character, and we're actually going to read a letter stating that. This idea that marriage would cut down on story ideas in comicdom, it's ingrained, it's deep, it's in there. However, despite all this, they would come back and play with this idea a lot, not just in these imaginary stories either. They would have an entire Mr. and Mrs. Superman Kent set up as a series of stories taking place on Earth too. But let's examine how this outing plays out. Early one Sunday morning, Metropolis, several years hence, on a day that may or may not happen. They really don't want you to forget that. He's still sound asleep, the darling. I'll go make breakfast for him before he awakens. Lois and Clark are very happily married, and Lois starts to reminisce about the day when he proposed. Please marry me, Lois. I can't, Clark. There's someone else I love, even though he may never propose. It's Superman. I like how she says that like it's a secret. Everybody knows. Before Lois's amazed eyes, Clark had performed an astonishing transformation. He hulked out. Clark Kent? Really Superman? Oh no, I can't believe it. If you still want me, the answer is yes. But why did you wait so long to propose?
I feared that if I married you, my enemies would seek to strike at me by harming you, but I've thought of a solution. As far as the world will know, you'll be marrying meek, mild Clark Kent. You alone will share the secret of my real identity. That way, your life will remain safe. The concept that he would marry her as Superman is a pretty foreign one, again, from a contemporary perspective, but that's the way it was presented, that she would be marrying Superman. In the Silver Age, there's much more of a delineation between Clark Kent and Superman, and it leans much more towards Superman as main and Clark Kent as persona, which is a bit different than the more contemporary presentation that's been given rise to before, but especially since post-crisis, which is that Clark Kent is the true identity and Superman is more the guise he takes on. But Clark Kent is Superman, not Superman pretends to be Clark Kent. There's a pretty big difference between the two. It's something that's evolved over time. Another thing that can be lost a bit is that Clark is really meant to be viewed as unimpressive. Like, dating him may actually be embarrassing. A lot of things about him that are meant to connote weakness, they don't translate as well, such as the idea of him having glasses. Nowadays, that's just something that regular people, they have glasses. But it was meant to make him seem meek, mild, even weak. I note all this to say that there is an idea in place that even if Lois's main love interest wasn't Superman, but just one of her many millionaire suitors, that it would still be seen as settling if she were to marry Clark, just for some context, because context is king. And so they were married. Poor thing, she's marrying Clark Kent because she couldn't land Superman. I heard that, but I don't care what people think. As long as I have Superman for a husband, even if the world does believe he's Clark Kent. Who are these gossips and why are they invited to the wedding? They look so similar to the two women who were so quick to throw Superboy under the bus. Although in all fairness, in that issue, it was because Saturn Girl of the Legion, she was brainwashing people of Smallville to not like him anymore, but still. Suddenly, Lois's thoughts return to the present as mighty arms unexpectedly spin her about and hold her in a gentle grip. His arms are more powerful than a locomotive, but he holds me so gently. Oh, he's wonderful. Wonderful. Clark and Lois really do seem to have an idyllic life. He's completely honest with her, tries to keep her up to date in terms of a schedule and when he can be expected to be back. He sneaks out of the house via tunnel like he used to in Smallville so that people don't make the connection. He's never seen leaving their house, so they are thinking about the safety of the thing. She even helps him sneak off from work. They have secret signals. But this story needs conflict. So from whence does it come? It's emotional. Basically, Lois is constantly looked down upon by her neighbors, many of whom are better to do than them because of the idea that she's settled or married to someone who's just really not that impressive. All the wives in the neighborhood just constantly are bragging about their husbands and putting her down. At first it seems like it's accidental, but then it starts to happen directly to her face. And Lois's frustration is that she knows she's married to Superman but can't tell anyone. So she just has to put up with this, people being deliberately cruel to her, even sometimes people who her husband has saved. What a morning. My husband's oil wells were almost destroyed and I've been so busy inviting the town's 10 best couples to the town council dance. Please come. We'll go. Why not invite our new neighbors, the Kents, too? This is Mrs. Kent. I'm sorry, but I can invite only important people. Your husband is just a newspaper man, isn't he, Mrs. Kent? You can see why I can't possibly. We wouldn't go if you begged. You snob, if my husband hadn't saved your husband's oil wells, you'd be wiped out. Now, this is of course upsetting, and while it does play into some of the gender politics of the time, it also transcends. This is one of those moments that's not so super far removed. It would be frustrating to have people look down upon one when one knows in secret that actually they're completely wrong. And most people don't enjoy having their partner denigrated to their face, especially if they think or know that they're much better than people believe. Sometimes the emotional drama of these stories can come across as contrived or not entirely translate because it is so mired in the time. While sometimes it can be understood more from a historical context, it doesn't always make the leap, but this is not one of those times. This situation is more grounded. While situating it in its time period does level up why Lois is so upset, it still rings true at the core today, time of recording. Although of course there may be some wondering why she can't just get over it, or think that it may even be thrilling to have a secret like that. However, in this story, it's eating at Lois. Later, when Superman returns home through the secret tunnel, Great guns, what's going on here?
I'm so sizzling mad. I ruined the meal and burned my finger. Some of the neighborhood women think they're so grand. Their husbands are so brilliant, so clever, they said. Those witches practically came right out and told me I married a creep. No one is more wonderful than you. I've got the world's sweetest, smartest, strongest man, but the trouble is nobody knows it.
Oh, please don't cry, honey. I want the whole world to know I married a wonderful girl, but we can't risk getting you killed. Come on, be brave. Let's see a smile. Even a little one. Smile if you want a super kiss.
There is that condescending attitude I was waiting for.
He's trying to cheer her up, but the way it comes across.
There's another angle one can take here, and this isn't one that's entirely presented, but just if one starts to really get down to the weeds and think about this, potentially overthink it, and that's what we do here. There is something very interesting about this raising the question of, since Lois does love Superman and Clark is presented as more of a persona, was part of why Lois wanted to marry him because she wanted the notoriety and prestige of being Superman's wife? It's interesting to think about. There are some seeds there, and then when you start to think about how sometimes they pair her with Lex, think about it. Another element that's intriguing is that the solution that they've come to of the fact that she's married to Clark, that's just the status quo time of recording. Of course Lois would marry Clark. How could someone marry a superhero? To marry the Superman persona publicly comes across as odd, or could to a contemporary reader. So it's interesting to come at this from hindsight, where this is so clearly the actual solution that would work, and see it presented as a problem instead. What do I care what other people think? I've got a marvelous husband and I'm the luckiest girl on earth.
Don't worry your pretty little head about making lunch. Here are some hamburgers fried by my X-ray vision.
Superman cooks food with his X-ray vision, confirmed. I don't know if I'd want to eat it though. You know, all this going on, it's sweet, minus those little period-typical condescending moments, which are also meant to be sweet, but don't entirely translate. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. This is all followed by a whole sequence where things are going well, and we get to see them use their secret signals and how she's able to help get Clark out so that he can go and help even more as Superman. They're a team. Help! Clark is locked in! I absentmindedly closed and locked the door while he was inside. The time lock won't open for an hour, he'll suffocate! Relax, Lois. There's enough air in there for him until the safe opens. Harry's like, if he dies, he dies. One less check to pay.
How ironic. I used to trick Lois as Clark in order to get away into action as Superman. Now she helps me fool others for the very same purpose.
Is that true irony? I'm so used to irony not being used correctly that I don't even know anymore. You see, the problem for this story is there's still not enough conflict. Things are working out too well. So now we need to try even harder. Clark brings Lois this gorgeous chameleon dress that changes color based on her mood. I'm obsessed with it, as the influencers say. It's the crisscrossing. I genuinely want this dress. But alas, Lois has to burn it. Oh, I simply adore that one. Let me hold it before me. That's weirdly phrased. Let me hold it before me. Oh, I see. Let me hold it before. That sounds very grand. Oh, I took the chameleon dress out of the closet by mistake. If Lucy touches it, it will change color and she'll know it's from another world. Reluctantly, Lois sacrifices her favorite gown. You tossing it in the fireplace? Why? It's just an old rag. I don't want it anymore. I couldn't say it was a gift from Superman. Lucy might begin to suspect Clark might be the Man of Steel. I don't know. Given how oblivious people are to the fact that they're the same person, she might just think that Lois is cheating. That problem is a bit more on the contrived side, but things quickly get more grounded again right after. Lois and her sister Lucy are having lunch, and Lucy makes this remark about how she's really surprised that Lois was able to marry Clark and get over Superman. We get to see Lois struggle with the secret and that she can't tell people, but also there's this layer that society is judging her not just because Clark is less impressive than Superman, but because her pursuit of Superman was so public. So it's like she failed or gave up, and it's known to people, and then they measure their marriage against that. And also because no one knows that Superman is married, he still gets assaulted by women on the regular. Like when he presents a plaque to a starlet and she just grabs and kisses him. And of course, Lois is in the audience. Mwah!
Oh, she's impulsively kissing me right in front of Lois.
The hussy. I gotta tear her hair out. These Silver Age comics love the word hussy. It's not even a true homage if we can't get hussy in there. Once upon a time, you've been terribly upset seeing another woman kissing Superman. I've never seen you look so calm. It's the calm before the storm. Wait till that hard-working husband of mine gets home, I'll slaughter him. She knows how too. And then Superman was never seen again. When Lois's super spouse nervously returns to his love nest.
Lois, be reasonable. I couldn't tell that actress I was married. Your life depends upon our keeping it a secret.
I know, but I still don't like it. After Lois simmers down. I'm so unhappy. Won't people ever know we're married?
Maybe someday. Meanwhile, think how dull life would be without problems. But at least, dear, we've got each other.
See future issues of this magazine for more stories about the imaginary marriage between Lois and Superman that may come true or may not.
What a downbeat ending.
You see, kids, if they were married, they'd be miserable, or at least Lois would be miserable. Superman seems pretty okay, except for the fact that she's not. Happy wife, happy life, and all that. He's genuinely upset by this, because in this story he's presented as a very loving, attentive, considerate husband. It's sweet. He comes across as more kind in this story than he does in the main issues usually. While this story is being set up a bit as a C, this is why the status quo is better, it ends up being a fairly thought-provoking story from a more adult perspective. It features some realistic sources of marital stress, and they don't overplay them too much. Although in all fairness, it does look like nothing here is insurmountable or something that couldn't be worked out. It also makes the idea of the threat against her life feel more credible because they are doing something to so actively combat it versus other stories where sometimes it can come across as though Clark is making excuses. There's something about this concept that sells it more. However, while these problems come across as something that could be worked through with time, Lois's feelings are also presented as valid, and she's not treated as though she's freaking out over nothing in the story by either the narrative itself or Superman. Now, part of that's coming from the periodicalness of these are things she should be upset about, but again, they are things that can be related to. The idea of exploring the stress of keeping Superman's secret and what that would mean, contrasted against the fantasies of what Lois hoped for when she wanted to be married to Superman, could get pretty deep if more examined. They keep them a bit more surface than that, but there are kernels there. And it is just interesting to think about. Is having that little secret happiness enough? Is it wrong to want more? Is it wrong to feel shamed or judged by the opinions of others? There's a lot going on here. And they do continue this in the next issue, where they encounter new marital difficulties. In the second one of these imaginary tales, they adopt Supergirl. So let me know if you want to hear about that one, because it's pretty wild. This story holds up, and it was the start of a very strong and long-lasting concept, although some would argue that it could be / is overused. I say / is because this does very much feel like Elseworlds. It's essentially the same concept. But with a whole, this is another universe angle, which is how they rationalize a lot of the imaginary stories post-crisis. It's just that Elseworlds usually change more things about the universe. It's less, what if this character were married? What if this character was actually this character's dad? But I had to hear what other people thought. To the letters column. Dear editor, I could almost kiss you for starting your wonderful new imaginary series, which shows us what life would be like for Lois Lane if she were married to Superman. It held me spellbound. Please continue this series until they both marry for real. Gloria Higgins. If we do what you suggest, you may have to read this magazine for more time than Franklin D. Roosevelt was president of the U.S. Superman marrying Lois, that's ridiculous. Marriage ends your life. Comics have taught me that. You never do anything interesting again, or you die. Are you ready to see some periodical attitudes manifest entirely in a response to a fan? We're gonna see a past example, because that still happens. It's time to watch a fan get crushed. Dear editor, everyone knows that Lois and Clark are constantly trying to outscoop each other. Will this rivalry exist even after their imaginary marriage? If so, what would happen if Lois feels that Clark stole a story she was working on? And Zeke. We don't think this problem will come up. Superman believes that a wife's place is in the home. What's really funny about that reply is that in the story we just read, Lois was still working at the planet. But I guess the idea is that if she were truly married to Superman, then no wife of Superman's could be seen working. However, this suggestion, it's such a fun idea, especially in the context of the Silver Age and how outlandish their schemes got. Can one imagine if that had been allowed to play out? A Lois who now knows that Clark is Superman, who's trying to create even more complex schemes than she usually did to outscoop him, and vice versa, because he feels comfortable to be able to try and play the same game back at her. That's fun. However, because of the editor's attitudes, they couldn't even embrace or get even close to approaching the concept. And then a ton of stories won't be utilized for decades. Lois working, married to Superman? Disgusting. I love the letters so much. I just wish there was a book just full of letters. It saddens me that they don't reprint them more. One guaranteed sale for the book of letters. This story is historically significant, but it's also a strong outing, and it highlights that there is a place for this type of story, and there's interest in it. It could be an overused concept, so you have to use it sparingly, but the idea is that it can be really well done, and this is. There's a lot of emotional depth to be mined here if one so chooses, that one could read below the surface, but even if one doesn't, it's still a solid outing with what's there. But if one does think about it a bit more, both in its context and from a contemporary one, it's so rich, both in terms of relationship roles and also what Clark and Lois's relationship became. They've reprinted this one a fair bit. The most recent one I have is in the DC's Finest Superman family. The cover is Turtle Man Jimmy, because of course it is. Of course, it is not for everyone. For some, the attitudes in it will be too archaic, the premise too slice of life, or just too silly. Some may find the conflict forced or frustrating. Some may not appreciate that it's part of what gives birth to the plethora of Elseworlds stories that exist today. So I would love to hear your thoughts. Please put them down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. I sped through that because Alan's at the door and he's been meowing. I'll see y'all again soon. Bye-bye.